Connecting with purpose is about doing what matters most in a time when our families, workplaces, and communities need us. This show from Purpose Views presents honest conversations about what's possible when we invest in helping our people be their best, purposeful selves. You'll hear the challenges of making those investments and tips for reaping their rewards. This show is designed to help people-first leaders like you create the impact you seek. Let me introduce you to the purpose-driven and real-talking hosts, Mark, Neil, and Nell.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Connecting with Purpose. And today I've got Mark, who's an SVP with NFP Insurance Brokers, who acquired his prior company, First Person, in 2001, where he served as the President and Chief Strategy Officer. Mark's been involved in this industry for years and really focused on building strategies for companies around the benefits, compensation, employee experience. Also importantly, having had an opportunity to catch up with Mark before, very much a people-focused leader, and has a really cool little side, I don't know, it's a side hustle so much as an absolute passion for being a play-by-play commentator, something he's done pretty much since college. So really interested to explore passions with Mark, his application of his purpose through his career. And excited to welcome Mark to Connecting with Purpose. Thanks for being here.
Mark, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Looking forward to the chat.
Yeah, same here. And I guess I've given a very high-level bio, but maybe if you want to give us a few highlights of how you got to where you're at.
Yeah, I grew up in the Chicago suburbs and lived there pretty much my whole life through high school. Went down to a school in Indianapolis, Butler University, and had a desire after playing sports my whole life growing up to get into the broadcasting side. It was a childhood dream. Had the chance to study broadcasting at Butler, ended up picking up a double major in business, got a chance to call minor league baseball games. Butler's basketball team went to unprecedented heights during my time there with some of my friends and classmates going to back-to-back national championship games. So got to be involved in multiple aspects of broadcasting and covering teams. During that stretch, when I graduated, my predecessor, who had been the voice of the Butler basketball team during those runs, left to go to Georgia Tech, and it opened up an opportunity right out of school and a team going into the Big East Conference to pursue that. And it's been 10 years now and have loved every minute of being able to do the play-by-play broadcasting for Butler basketball. In conjunction with that, had an opportunity when I was in school to, as I said, study business and did some internships with Motorola and a consulting group housed out of Butler, and landed with a company called First Person at the time, as you mentioned, which I've been there for a decade as well, and had a chance to meet their founder, Brian Brenner, come on board and help grow that consulting organization. And just a couple years ago, moving into a true acquisition with NFP, and it's been a fantastic experience over the last couple of years as well. So I've lived in these two different worlds, but there's a lot of similarities and a lot of different things to learn from, and have lived in Indy for the last decade plus, and just really found a wonderful home here.
Awesome. Yeah, I love kind of to explore those two worlds, and especially as you said around some of the similarities. And to that end, and I don't know if you can see the thing back behind me here, but you know, purpose. Our definition of purpose, part of that is passion, right? And so you've got this passion for the play-by-play broadcasting. What is it about that kind of, I mean, it lights you up, right? I mean, what is it about that appeals to you and that you find that you just have this incredible passion for?
Well, there's a lot that is passion, I'm passionate about, that gives great energy. First off, I loved playing sports, and I think anybody who's a broadcaster in sports would love to be the one playing the sport. But I found out pretty quickly that while I had some talent, it was never going to be, once in a generation talent. So you learn where you might be able to extend your career a little bit more in that. And I always loved the idea, Mark, of the storytelling side. I was fascinated because I enjoyed listening and watching great broadcasters of various sports that I grew up watching and being passionate about. And I love the way you could convey emotion. And even though you weren't physically there, being able to still get the emotional experience that sports can create. And I just loved the complexity of that. Somehow it sounded so simple, but it's not simple to create that. And how you can get emotion by not even being at the event, just watching a screen or listening to a radio, and the magic of how that's created. And so whether you're broadcasting to two people or broadcasting to thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions or whatever, it's still that same idea of being able to convey and story tell and tell other people's stories, which is something you're passionate about in both the business and the broadcasting side as well. It's been a fantastic opportunity to be able to do that at a school and with a team that you love to support, you're very passionate about as well. So that only makes the experience more beneficial and more invigorating for me on a daily basis.
Love it. So there's something about being immersed in the storytelling and conveying that emotion and getting that across, whether it's telling the story of the game and the obviously stories of the participants in the game and so on and so forth. And so that kind of tackles on the passion piece. And then I'm interested in, to what extent do you think about the audience, the people that are listening, and are you intentional about, if you like, the impact that has on them, or is it more about just kind of like being immersed in the moment and the storytelling? And do you connect the dots between that, like the passion piece and the impact piece, like the impact that might have on the people that are listening? And what do you think about that?
It's a great question, and I think there's a little bit of both in the answer and how you do that. Number one, I do think that what's really important is when you're a broadcaster, it's not about you. Nothing that happens is about you. You are seeing other things happen. You're telling other people's stories. You're describing other events. It's not what I'm doing. I just become a funnel essentially to take all of the things that are happening in front of me and try to narrow that down into something that's I can communicate and convey. And you try to do that can elicit as many different emotional reactions and bring people in the best way possible to experience as much as possible. So when you think about the impact side, you are thinking about ultimately end listeners, right? And what is going to create a great experience for them. Now, part of that's shaped by how you like to experience, how you like to call different broadcasts. There's so many different broadcasters out there, so many different styles. There are some basics that are universal in how people call games and convey that and view that. But there's also very different styles, emotional levels, level of specific information versus emotional reactions. I mean, there's so many different ways that people convey the storytelling. But ultimately, the reason you're doing it is because somebody's listening out there, right? You may not know who that person is. You may not know where they are, what their background is, whether they're family, friend, somebody who's opposed to the team, or whatever the case might be. But I think your job, and you think about the impact, is somebody's taking the time to be interested in what's happening here. So whether it's a 1-point game and there's 15 seconds left, or it's a 30-point game and it's not very close at the end of it, or it's not as high profile of a game, it still matters. And that's why people are tuning in, whether it's one or two people. And so to take it seriously, to how you prepare for the game, how you broadcast the game, the passion you have with it, that is the impact thing that I always remind myself of. And there's countless stories of people driving around listening to a broadcast that may not apply to them. It may be a family member who can't get to the game that they're here. So there's always somebody on the other end that you got to convey. And that's you try to make sure that every broadcast is something you can be proud of, not knowing exactly who it impacts or how it impacts them.
Okay, love that. Yeah, preparation, passion, and pride. Three nice P's there in terms of taking the audience into account. And so I was interested then in sort of like, well, how have you kind of parlayed that into leadership? Then when you're thinking about the business side and your experience in this industry that you've been part of, kind of on the consultative side and the insurance side of this, how does some of this parlay across, and what things do you see as kind of like the passions that show up as a leader, and some of the impact that you feel you've had as a leader?
I would say that if anybody wants to develop business skills, learning how to be a broadcaster or enhancing your communication capabilities is a fantastic life lesson, whether it's in high school, growing up, college, professional, whatever the case might be, because there are so many parallels to it. And I get the parallels both ways. So, for example, on the broadcasting side, Mark, there's examples where it's learning how to communicate complex things that are happening in the most efficient way possible, that you're able to also convey not just words, but emotion around that, right? If you're watching a sporting event and you're trying to commentate all of the people, all of the fans, all of the activities, all of the storylines coming into it, you can only say so many words and have people actually understand what's happening. Same thing in business. You have to convey complex things, and you have to do things in a way that keep people attention, get people excited about a message. And there's a lot of parallels there in terms of learning how to communicate. Time management and preparation are really important. If you go into a broadcast and you don't know what you're doing, it shows. If you aren't thinking about how to manage the words and how to manage the broadcast in a way that's on time, hitting breaks, rolling past errors when they happen, overcoming words and stumbles and picking yourself right up. A lot of those things are the case in business too. If you're not prepared for a meeting, if you're not prepared for how to grow your business, you're going to struggle. If you make a mistake, how quickly can you pick yourself back up and just move on? It's not that embarrassing. You got to just continue to push on. And I think the time management thing's really big. You only have so many minutes in the day to figure out how to get things done. You got to maximize those. And so being efficient, not wasting time, not wasting words. There's a lot of parallels in terms of how you manage the day. And ultimately, a lot of business and a lot of people leadership's about storytelling, understanding who people are, understanding their why, understanding whether it's a listener or a player on the field. Very similar to constituents you might have in an organization, your clients, your internal colleagues, your team, your leaders, all of those different constituents. You have to understand where people are coming from. Why are they there? Why is somebody listening to this broadcast? What are the storylines for this team coming into the game that you want to be able to convey to enhance the game itself? Just it's a seeking to understand at all turns so that you can properly have as good of an idea of who the players are on the field, what's at stake, why it matters. But the other thing that happens, Mark, it's all unscripted. Nothing's choreographed, just like life. You don't really know what's going to happen. So you try to understand your cast of characters. You try and understand the plot points. You try and understand why it matters. But you got to be able to react and adapt and draw, context from where somebody came from and what's important to somebody into future. So a lot of parallels to business in terms of how you prepare, how you understand where people are coming from, but being able to adapt to the inevitable ups and downs and curveballs that come into business, organizations, clients, etc.
Love that. And so off the back of you kind of embracing all of these, if you like, these characteristics that you've referenced that are shared between these two areas, and thinking about the audience. So let's take it into the business context now. The people that you're serving, supporting, the people that you're leading, if you like, depending on what your approach on that is. That understanding who they are and what's their why, you mentioned, just sort of flipping that back onto you, like, I guess how would you say, what's your why, and how have you sort of brought that to life across your career?
Well, I think in all things that I do, I'm fascinated and love the idea of genuine human connection, authentic human connection, and understanding people's stories and understanding how to make a positive impact. And at some level, Mark, finding a way to just enrich others' lives. And my life gets enriched when others are at their full potential, when others are happier. I try to make a positive impact wherever I can, in both the business setting, the broadcast setting, and with my friends, with my family, etc. That's what gives me energy. I love the idea of being able to understand, get to know people. I love when the world gets smaller. All of these concepts are what really drive me. And that's been the fun thing in business, whether it's being a part of and helping lead an organization, growing a client base, getting to know all of their stories in our consulting world, or on the broadcast side, building relationships with each game that you call, each team that you cover, each coach that you get to interact with. And that's why the Butler thing and the Butler family has been such an important piece for me over the last decade, is because you've identified with Butler as a graduate, and you want to give back in any way you can. You want to tell that story really well. And I also learn from that. Mark. You also learn, you see coaches in locker rooms, you see players, you see all these concepts professionally with a kind of an adjacent view to it all that you can then go apply back to your daily. So it's an iron sharpen iron deal. And my job, I just, for my purpose, I love to be able to try and enrich any interaction that I have.
Yeah, I love the power of authentic connections combined with storytelling to enrich that relationship and drive
Yep.
some form of positive impact. And we'll get to the positive impact actually towards the end of the podcast, because we always look at that as part of people's legacy that they leave behind them every day, right? But having kind of if you like, narrowed down your purpose then, and it's very authentic to you, and it embraces all of these characteristics that you've talked about before, where ultimately it's enriching the experience with this person through connection, through storytelling to help them move forward. What's your view on kind of the opposite of that, in terms of when people are referring to purpose, which has become a little bit of a buzzword, but as far as we're concerned, it's very much an inside out approach to purpose, in terms of people just being their authentic best self and making a difference. What's purpose not to you?
It's a great question. You've hit on an authenticity piece, which I think is very real. But on the purpose side, I think sometimes purpose can get very transaction-ish. I don't know the right way to say this. Assembly. It's like purpose is what it's supposed to be. What I'm told, what it looks like. My purpose, I'm trying to draw from what others do, and you're not really getting to the unique piece of the why of you, right? What is it that drives? I think sometimes it's kind of like culture. It can get a little buzzwordy, right? What's culture in an office? It's a ping pong table and these snacks and these other types of things. And culture are the 5 things that we put on the wall, regardless if we live it out or not. And I think with purpose, I think a lot of times people feel like they have an idea of purpose based on what they read or they see, or some social media post has somebody talking at them saying this is what everybody of a life with purpose is. But I don't think people a lot of times really take enough time to figure out what it is that drives them, right? Understanding their why, and understanding how, what, that they're essentially, if somebody doesn't understand what really drives them, you're just driving to other people's expectations of purpose. And I think not enough people take time to reflect on what really moves the needle for them, what really gives them satisfaction, because you're always kind of chasing something else. And you're trying to live up to a standard of purpose that's people don't take the time to really unpack themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think because you often hear purpose and why being kind of synonymous, and we would agree with it being the why in terms of sort of the essence of what gets people up in the morning. But when you really dig into it, it's you'll hear the word superpowers and gifts as well. It's people understanding what their superpowers are, what their gifts are, and applying them to make a difference. Yep. And understanding what that difference is they can make, which acts as the motivation.
They don't have your formula, Mark. They don't have your formula.
Well, it's and so regardless of whether you have the formula or you haven't, in your experience, in terms of what has worked, what have been some things that you've done that have really helped understand your people's why and their motivators and their superpowers and the difference that they can make? Like, what have you been able to do to actually kind of bring that to life, and what impact have you seen within the business from having done that?
Well, I think unpacking a little bit, there's probably a few of these examples we could talk about. Number one, when you talk about passion, I think I get to be a banner and live out how important it is for people to truly lean into their passions when it comes to the workplace. Usually a job is a job, and it's limiting, and it's not energy giving all the time. And for me, I couldn't be a higher spokesperson for people being able to create balance in their own life, pursue their passions, whatever that is, whether it is broadcasting, whether it's cooking, whether it's starting a business, finding time to work out, being with their family, whatever the thing is that people want to do, that they ground themselves in, that they're passionate about. I think we're better as colleagues, we're better as teams, organizations, if people are able to pursue those passions comfortably and not feel like they have to look over their shoulder all the time. And examples of that would be, we just had an associate that started here, that graduated from Harvard, had his MBA at Butler, and had a dream despite multiple career challenging injuries in football, had a dream to be in the NFL. We hired him on the compensation team. He tried to pursue that dream, went to a pro day, got a chance to try out with the Indianapolis Colts, the New England Patriots. And just the other day, Mark, he got signed by the Colts to the 90-day roster. It was an unbelievable story, and one of the more unique resignations we've had, as he had to inform us he would be going to summer camp for the NFL and following his dream. And guess what our team did? They rallied like hell around it, and we're so excited for him. And by proxy, he was so grateful that he could pursue that. And who knows where that goes? Whether it's a short career in the organization or a lifelong Hollywood movie story in the NFL, right? I don't know, but him being allowed to freely pursue that, and how that shows other people in our organization how they can pursue those things as well, is really important. When you think about impact and application, I find that a lot of times people are their own biggest governors to their full potential. When you talk about professional accomplishments, people are very limiting, whether it's an imposter syndrome, whether it's I've not seen an example of a person who looks like me or who has this age or diverse background or whatever, and people limit their own potential. So I think a good leader, I think, tries really hard to call people to levels that they're a little uncomfortable with, challenges them. That doesn't mean just trying to climb a corporate ladder and this is the next level in this job and things like that. It means you can go breadth and depth and pivot the type of career and pivot the type of role, and really challenge, if you're struggling in this role, is it because you're maybe not the right fit for the organization, or is it actually because it's not the right role fit? And we just got to have a better conversation about getting to explore what those types of things are. So really, truly trying to understand each individual, who they are, what makes them unique, and call them to levels that they never experienced themselves. It's always going to be fun to look in the rearview mirror afterwards and think, I can't believe it's like climbing a mountain, right? Each step's difficult. You look back, oh my gosh, look how much ground we've covered. Same way with people's individual career. So not only letting people pursue their passions and supporting those and bending into those and being excited for them in life, but also helping them make a greater impact in their own career development, their own opportunities to expand their potential. And that's being a good coach. That's not just being a manager. That's being a really good coach and supportive to people's personal growth, which will allow people to start to figure out their greater purpose, right? And support them on that journey.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I love those two elements of kind of one, giving permission to, but then furthermore encouraging people to embrace and pursue their passions. In addition to this sort of this challenging people to push themselves, with the support and encouragement that they need to live at the edge, right? It's kind of like part of being in flow, and just sort of the balance of challenging skills and getting that just right. That's where you learn, it's where you fail, it's where you get back up, where you improve, and then prove to yourself that you can get something done. And you talked about emotions at the beginning and coaching, and I'm just interested in this kind of the EQ element of this. Like, when you think about that, like, what are some of the behaviors that you exhibit, or if you like, some of the characteristics that you use as a leader when you're coaching that enable people to kind of pursue those challenges with the confidence they need to sort of grow and realize that potential?
Yeah, boy, that's a fantastic and loaded question. There's so much in there around how EQ plays a role in helping people along their own journey. I think we'll just start here, which is, a lot of times when you think about the relationship that exists from a manager, from this coaching idea to help people develop, it's generally pretty transactional. There's a set number of check-ins. You're viewing things very linearly when it comes to this person's on this path. This is their next logical step. This is when the next opening. It's just there's a very sort of linear way that most people engage in that manager employee dynamic. I think from a coaching perspective, you really want to build genuine, this is back to the authentic relationship piece. You want to understand and have that level of authenticity that challenges, honestly, people's way of thinking. It pushes the envelope. You want to have a different depth of conversation, help them think about ideas. When I did internships, part of it was figuring out what you want to do. Part of it was figuring out what you don't want to do. I think a lot of times when you're having those conversations with employees and you're coaching, it's a very simple track. What do you want to do? This is how you're going to do it. How do you move on in the organization? Talk about things that they're not going to want to do. Why are they not going to want to do that? Why do you not like doing these types of things? What are those? Understanding everything about somebody is going to be really important. And I think this is back to that idea of the why, or back to the idea of storytelling, really taking the time. When you're calling a game, I'm going to jump back to the broadcasting thing for an example. If all I do is memorize the statistics and I don't get to know the backstory of the individual in the game, I don't fully understand the team's story. If all I do is get to know somebody's work product or get to know how somebody's doing based on data or a monthly conversation or things like that, I don't really know the person. So there's no way I can truly get to know what the possibilities for that person are. And this is where it's about relationship building and authentically getting to know who somebody is, so you can better understand how their life and their passions and their things that they want to accomplish that they might not be able to articulate themselves yet because they don't know, or because of confidence, or whatever the case might be, intersect with the larger organizational opportunities and strategies that might exist today or might not yet exist, and you get the chance to create. So I really think a lot of that stuff from a coaching relationship goes back to digging in deeper into really authentically getting to know who somebody is and what their motivating factors are. And I think that's tougher to do because it takes time. And it seems counterintuitive when your whole goal is getting to a monthly one-on-one or getting to a performance evaluation or things like that. But you're never going to really uncover what the potential of somebody is if you continue to have that linear relationship in terms of a manager and employee. First, the dynamic, understanding the ecosystem at play between the teams as a whole.
Yeah, I think it rings so true for anybody that's had a coach or been a coach, that probably the first thing you learn is you don't know their story, and the whole of the point is to get to know their story, to support them in taking the best steps forward and learning from those. And if you had to simplify business right into getting the best out of people, if you knew everybody's story, if every manager and every team lead really genuinely knew each other's story and everyone knew each other's stories, you'd understand their motivations, you'd understand the drivers, you'd understand their agenda, you'd understand their priorities, you'd understand their challenges, and you'd be able to embrace those and sort of tie them towards where they can optimize their contribution. So what I'd be interested in exploring is, I guess, firstly, let's tee it up with this. You've talked about some challenges, like time's a challenge to get to know people's story. But what's an ideal state? Like, take your existing company, like what would be the ideal state of, if you like, employee engagement for you? What would you love to see based upon what you've sort of talked about so far? Like, what would be just amazing to see from an engagement perspective?
Yeah, and building off that question, I do think it starts with how leaders view themselves in the context of the team. And servant leadership is something that people can read a lot about. There's a lot of definitions of that. One of the things that when we think about that in terms of building a highly engaged culture, a highly engaged team, one of the challenges that people generally face when it comes to how do I really authentically get to know somebody and how do I really put that to work is people generally view that from their vantage point. This is what I think somebody is. This is how this person impacts me and my role and what I need to get done. And I think if you can just really flip that and forget, if as a manager, forget what your individual goals are for a second and try and understand how to maximize each individual person on the team, your results will take care of themselves, right? This is a common coaching and things like that. A lot of people don't take time to individually maximize the team. They're focused on their outcomes and how the team can help them accomplish their outcomes, right? Very different approaches into that. When you think about creating an engaged team, you're back on, I don't know, the alliteration concept. And I would say allowing people opportunities to truly focus and get work done. I would say creating an environment with a lot of freedom for folks to be able, autonomy in that space to get it. And the last one I would think is it's just this idea of fun. And so when you think about an engaged workforce, if all you're doing is consistently throwing curveballs, this is now a priority, this is a priority, this is a priority, this is a priority, it's really challenging for people to feel focus and feel like they're actually getting work done. They're actually accomplishing the tasks they need to. So sense of accomplishment is really important to creating an engaged workforce. The second one there is fairly obvious, but is still really difficult. What is that sense of freedom? Especially in an environment where somebody's younger in their career, where they don't understand, they need that apprenticeship, they need the learning, they need the understanding, they need the interaction. But you also have to allow for an environment where people can feel like I can grow and I can leave my mark on this. I can add value. I can have the freedom to create new ways of doing the process, new ways of adding value to the organization, et cetera. And I think the last one can't be overstated enough. And maybe this is the millennial coming out of me, but it's the fun piece. You have to enjoy what you're doing. This is back to the passion, the impact, the application. If you don't have fun yourself, if you don't enjoy seeing your team succeed, if you don't enjoy seeing your clients succeed, and if you don't get enjoyment when your teammates are happy, it's a tough environment. It's like a team. You don't have to be happy every day. You don't have to like love everybody on the team every day. You doesn't mean you don't give hard, candid conversations and things like that, but it means that you have fun doing what you're doing. Because if people are going to put their hand to the work and put their hand to investing in this being the thing that helps develop their career, boy, you got to enjoy what you're doing in there. And so I think a highly engaged workforces and teams have those types of components as high level and as simple as they might sound, as true bedrocks of what creates an engaged, exciting workforce on a daily basis.
Well, yeah, I mean, to use another F, I'd say they're kind of foundational, and kind of almost like fundamental truths, right? I think like focus, freedom, and fun, they're easy to keep front of mind, and they're things that every leader can do. I can provide clarity. I can provide support and challenge, and enough freedom for people to kind of get there their own way, so they feel like they've been able to contribute and learn in the process. And obviously, you can infuse some fun into it. So these are great, I think. With, if you like, the thing that sits below that is the foundation of storytelling, right? And just getting to know each person, so you can apply those three Fs, if you like, in a meaningful way to each individual. So with that as like an awesome model, I love that as a model, actually. What's getting in the way, like in real life? Like, what's an actual challenge? I'm like, I wish we could overcome this. Like, what's getting in the way of that being able to be embraced across the organization, to get the best out of everybody?
Well, number one thing I would say, Mark, is life's complicated, people are complicated, and people make up organizations, and life's happening every day. So whatever foundation you put in place here is constantly getting tested. And it's not just one leader in an organization, it's trying to infuse that through everybody in the organization. Managers, individual contributors, team leads, etc., is having, if that's what you're going to say, then the good times isn't where that's not where you earn that, right? It's in the challenges. It's the person has an individual family situation that is making things difficult, not just for them and their family, but for the other people on their team. How do you respond? Can you live it out in that moment? It's when the work gets really busy, either because of growth, because of market dynamics, because of clients had a challenge, whatever. How do you live those types of things out? Are you able to do? So I think, the idea of building that is, first off, it doesn't happen overnight. You can't just say, if you've got an organization of 10 people or 100 people or 1,000 people, snap your fingers and everybody's overnight going to buy into what we're doing. because you're constantly bringing new people into the organization. People are turning over. People have their own individual life challenges. Sometimes if you don't understand where people are headed in life and what they're passionate about, you get off track and people's perception gets, I mean, it's just a constant state of, understanding people, understanding the organization, understanding how you build the messaging, understand how you stay committed to the core things while the business, while market dynamics, while the world evolves. And I think finding the right types of leaders and thus then having folks in the organization who aspire to be a part of that type of culture and also then want to leave their imprint on it is really the thing that is the game changer. You have to have the critical mass of the organization of people where if that is not the way that everybody operates, it starts to break down. It could break down really quickly. And then it can take a couple comments from a couple people, one person leaves, a couple people leave, and suddenly you're playing defense. You're trying to figure out how to restore what was there. And so I just think if you think about it in the sense that it's constant, you're an organization is constantly essentially under these threats from all these different areas. It can be a little overwhelming. But if you just view that as like that's the way the world works, in the same way that life's challenging and you're going to meet people are going to have challenges in your life. Something's going to go wrong. This day is going to be better than the other day. And so you deal with that as an individual. You put on, how you attack your day, how you view your own purpose, your own passion, your own impact in your life is a lot of the same way as being a leader in an organization. Those are inevitable. Those are going to be challenges. It's how do we stay committed to the things that are going to make us unique and make it whatever the foundation is that you drive your organization from. You can't just do that. You got to be authentic about it each and every day. You can't just do that when, there's a random moment when things are good. So.
Yeah, agreed. And I love the kind of that framework that you had to, because it simplifies the complexity of the things you can control as a leader, right? You can control focus by clarifying goals and people's contribution to goals. You can control creating freedom, the right amount of freedom for people based upon the support and challenges that they need, and you can control making things fun. There's a lot of stuff in business you can't control, and so that's the stuff you kind of have to accept. But to sort of simplify the complexity of all of the people elements, using a framework like that creates a consistent language with, if you've got a few behaviors associated with that, then enable people to put them into practice. I think that's incredibly powerful. So we'll have a side chat on that, because I'd like to dive into that a little bit more. But what I'd like to do is just bring it back to you. Actually, I've really enjoyed this, and I just wanted to end really with a little bit of kind of your thoughts on legacy, I guess. So I guess I'll pick a couple of questions, but when you think about the impact you want to leave behind as a leader, what would be, if you had to kind of condense that down into 2 or 3 words, what would be the words you'd want people to think of you having left behind as a leader?
That's that's interesting. A few words I would say, if I could have an impact by making others' lives better in whatever form or fashion that would be something that would be really meaningful to me. I would like to be able to think that if I wasn't at the organization today, the organization would be just as strong as ever. I would like to think that the friendships and the relationships that you have both from a business and a personal perspective, that's generally what you see is what you're going to get with me, and that I tried to approach each and every day with making people feel better, more positive impact. That does not mean that you're just catering to people. It doesn't mean you don't have tough conversations, you don't have candor, but that it's with the best of intentions. And vice versa, I solicit that. I want that feedback. I want to understand how I can be better each day. So I would hope that I had a chance in whatever way, whether it's professionally or personally, to make, improve in some way, enrich somebody else's life by having a connection with me.
Yeah, and I think that brings it back round full circle, right? Because the way you do that is embracing these authentic connections through storytelling and getting to know other people's stories so that you can leave them in a better place, leave the organization in a better place, get better yourself a little bit every day. And I think that's really a lovely way to end, to circle it back to your purpose. So goes without saying, really enjoyed the conversation. We hit the fun element there for sure. There was a bit of freedom in terms of what we were talking about. So I really appreciate your time here, Mark, and for sharing your insights and passion for people, and how you've been able to bring that to life, in addition to maintaining your passion for broadcasting and understanding the similarities between the two. So thank you very much for joining us here on Connecting with Purpose.
Mark, I appreciate it. And I don't know that I would be able to have had a formula and unpack purpose until I got to know you and started reading up and listening up. So I appreciate what you're doing to help drive people's lives forward, organizations forward. So thank you, my friend.
Oh, you're very welcome. We love it.
We're energized about this journey and hope you choose to join us. Click the subscribe button now so you don't miss out on all the actionable wisdom to come.